So I guess we'll officially welcome everyone. You are here for an SAT or ACT walkthrough. I'm going to keep putting this survey link in the chat as folks just joined and other folks are joining. Good to see lots of familiar names on here. I see some Carmel campus kids. I see some water polo kids, ex-water polo kids, current water polo kids. Super fun, super fun. If you don't know me, my name is Mr. Higgins. I'm obviously at the Stevenson School, been there now for, this is my 11th year. Most of my time was at the Carmel campus. Last couple years, I've been at the Pebble Beach campus, focused on teaching Spanish. However, I've been doing test prep for much longer than that. I've actually been doing SAT and ACT prep now going on 20 years. I've seen some stuff in my time, and that's not to say like I know everything, because I don't. There's always, you know, new wrinkles coming out. But I think you're going to find tonight's session extremely useful, especially for those, and I think most of you on here are doing this, especially for those taking the test on the 27th. Like I said, guys, if you can, and I'll send it out one more time via chat, if you can complete that form, that little survey, handful of questions, I will put up results in a little bit. We'll kind of see where we are. And as I lay out kind of the plan tonight, we're literally going to go through not every problem, but we're going to go through every page of an SAT. It's branded, this session is branded as a dress rehearsal. You can also think of it as a walkthrough. And it's what I've been doing for years when students are about to take the test. Sometimes those are students I've worked with before. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's brand new, sometimes it's not. And, you know, I'm going to try and craft tonight to meet wherever you are with this. If you've been doing this for a long time and been doing test prep, it will be a good refresher for some of those things. If you've never done any test prep, it will be a good, basically practice set, if you will. What we won't do tonight, just so you guys understand that, we won't do specific problems. You can, right? As we go through the pages, you can certainly try some of those problems, but I'm not going to go through problems. Maybe take a peek at them to kind of see where they are, but we're all about, you know, how you're going to spend your time on test day and where you're going to put your effort. I have just given, you know, what I do with students. I have kind of a lot to go through, and I'm going to try and really limit that, because this is not the time, especially if you're taking the test on Tuesday, this is not the time to even have any stress of like, oh, I'm not ready. That can't enter the equation tonight. Number one objective tonight, and the number one reason why we're doing this, is so you reduce the stress. If you walk into the test stressed for whatever reason, that could be you're stressed about tests in general. That could be you have some outside thing happening in your life, maybe a personal situation, then you're not going to perform as well. This is a scientifically proven fact. If you're stressed, you do not perform as well. Straight up. Like, that's just the way it goes. So why we do this tonight, why I do it in this format, is to have you understand that this is a marathon. There's really no better way to say it. It is a marathon to get through the, you know, 3-ish hours. You don't have the essay, so it's pretty closer to 3 hours. But to get you ready for that, to say like, all right, you know, this is doable. I can do this. And it's really having you guys understand, you know, where you're going to spend your time. Is this a particular problem that you're going to spend some time on, or is this a particular problem that you're going to guess and move on? Let me lay out a couple things, right? And if you're taking notes, you know, I'll chime in and say, this is a place to take notes. If you're not taking notes, you're just processing this, that's fine too. However you learn, right? However you learn this stuff. But one absolute truth you have to know, you have to understand, and maybe writing it down, is don't leave any questions blank ever. I'll say that again, in case you're like, oh, what did he just say? It sounded serious what he just said. Don't leave any questions blank ever. Back in the olden days, there was a 1/4 point punishment for wrong answers. That is not the case anymore. As of 2016, with this current SAT version, as well as the ACT, we'll talk very briefly about the ACT. Tonight is not about the ACT, but I do want to plant some seeds about that. By the way, folks that are just joining, check your chat. There is a link to a survey that I'm asking you to complete before we get going. This will give me a sense of kind of where people are. But let me get back to this kind of, you know, major thing. Don't leave anything blank. Don't leave anything blank. Even if you've got like 5 questions to go and the proctor's like, time, put your pencils down, fill in some bubbles, right? Fill in some bubbles. Which reminds me of something we also will not do tonight. We will not look at an answer sheet. We will not look at a bubble sheet. And I'll just plant a seed right now to say that, you know, part of this activity, I shouldn't say this activity tonight, but part of the testing activity is filling in bubbles properly. No stray marks. Don't have any, you know, if you're going to erase something, erase it completely. What you don't want is, you know, the computer system that scans your answer bubble to have any question, to have any doubt. So neat, nice bubbles. We're not going to do any of that tonight because we're going to spend most of our time walking through the tests, making sure you understand what that all is. So I'm about to jump into it. A couple of folks are just coming in now. Again, guys, if you're just coming in, check your chat. There is a Google survey to fill out. That's going to help us kind of get started with what we're doing here. Oh, by the way, I am recording. So if you do miss something, I will, you know, put this in a link out, and either through the College Center, we'll send it out, or, you know, separately, I'll have it available, and I'll figure that part out. You can always email me at any point, at any time, guys. This is your time. Like, you're taking your Thursday night to spend your Thursday night with me. Don't be afraid to interrupt me. Don't be afraid to jump in with a question. You know, with so many students, I don't have a big gallery view going, so I can't see if people are raising hands. Feel free to chat, right? If that's a better method. I will say, kind of, you know, I get going on some things, and if you've chatted, just be patient. I will check chat. I might not get to it right away, but by all means, any questions you have, go ahead and put those in the chat. Our objective tonight is to have you walk away from tonight more comfortable, more confident, more relaxed about this test. Even if you're like, I hate these things, I don't like these things. Few people actually do. Some people do. Some people like these. Some people like that standardized testing environment. But if, you know, if anything, guys, that's the goal. That's the goal, so that you get this kind of like, all right, this is what, and again, I'm assuming a lot of you guys are doing it Tuesday. This is what the test is going to look like. Okay, so we're about to launch in, guys. I am going to pull up this survey because I want to see kind of where folks are. I will share some results as they apply. Let me see if I can pull up some things here. And yeah, so far 19 responses. If you haven't had a chance to respond, go for it. There's 20 students, so only one hasn't responded yet. So it's fine, totally fine. But let me show out some things here, and no judgment on your answers at all. Absolutely not. Okay, good. And one thing I want to peek at is any questions that you guys have, because I want to make sure we answer those questions. Our plan is to go till 9:30. I will wrap by then. If anyone has questions beyond that, we can certainly go a little longer, whatever you guys need, right? Again, the objective is to be prepared for test day. So let me show you this, guys. Let me see where you guys are. First question, what is your level of experience with the SAT? Somewhat varied. No one has taken the test several times, and that doesn't surprise me one bit, right? Because in this past year of the pandemic, testing centers have been closed. Very few centers have been able to actually offer the test. Very few students have been able to take the test, certainly multiple times, maybe once. So I get that, but some of you have. And so we kind of have this, you know, if we were to say, a general area, we've got very few. I'll make this bigger. That's probably hard to see on Zoom. Very few have done it several times. Very few have no idea, and a lot of folks are in between. So maybe once or taking some practice. So that's good to know. That's good to know. ACT, interesting, a little bit different in where this is. Very quickly on the ACT. This is very quick, guys, because tonight is not about the ACT. Tonight is about getting you ready for the SAT. ACT is, I could put an exact number on it, but we'll just say generally about 85 to 90% the same stuff. One of the major differences, if you're writing stuff down, this is something to write down, because this is something you have to consider. You do need to look at which test you like better, which setup you like better. Very simply, and I'm going to break it down into the, you know, we probably call it the brass taxes, the basics of it. In general, the ACT has more questions in less time. The SAT has fewer questions with more time. So that's kind of the first thing. If you're a fast worker, you might consider the ACT, because if there's more questions in less time, the questions can tend to be a little bit easier. And I'm talking about in general, right? For the average student, and not everyone is average, right? Second difference is the ACT, let me back up, the SAT is 2 scores, right? You have a verbal score and a math score. Your verbal score is made up of your reading, which we're going to see tonight, right? And the writing and language. So both of those combined make your verbal score. Your math score is 2 math sections, one of which you cannot use a calculator, one of which you can use a calculator. Combined together, we add up those scores, that's your score. The ACT, on the other hand, is 4 sections, and in this order, it goes English, and then it goes math, and then it goes reading, and then it goes science. And your overall score is an average of those 4 scores. So if you're more math inclined, the SAT math score is 50% of your overall score. You might want to do the SAT. If you're less math inclined, your math score is 1 of 4 scores. It's an average, and you might want to do the ACT. Again, very basic differences between these two. Let's look at this next question. True or false? Colleges will accept both ACT and SAT scores. That is absolutely true. It makes no difference. It makes no difference which one you take. Absolutely does not. So your goal, and most of us, I'm assuming, are juniors here. Your goal is to take this, or if you're taking it on, the Tuesday here, and over the summer, to kind of figure out which test you like better. Now, most, and this is, I won't get in the weeds, but most of California is comfortable with the SAT, and that's because the state of California has relationships with the college board. Schools get access to those things. A little bit different in different parts of the country where the ACT is favored. That's more of a political thing. But here's the key. All colleges will take either SAT or ACT. One of the questions I want to hear, let me jump to this one. How about this one? You must take the ACT or the SAT or ACT. That statement is false. And I want to clarify that. Now, especially with the pandemic, most schools, this is where you need to be in the driver's seat. You need to look at the schools you're interested in, because most schools are continuing the test optional policy that they've had in the past year. So you actually don't have to do these tests. What I would say to you on that is the data is showing that up to 70% of the highly selective schools, I'm talking UCs, ish, I shouldn't put UCs in that conversation. Take that out. Take out UCs. UC is a whole different ballgame. But the highly selective colleges we're seeing are actually admitting more students in this admission cycle, are admitting more students with test scores. Not all. It's like a 60 to 70% students getting admitted to those highly selective schools are submitting test scores, which means, hey, there's a 20 to 30% that are getting in without tests. Now, this is on you. You have to look at the schools and say, are they taking the test? Do you want to do that? My take on it is you can always take the test. If you don't get a score that gets you in the conversation that you want, you can opt to not submit the score, and that's fine. So I generally say, take the test, see how you do, but it's up to you, right? Which is another reason why we just say, just don't stress about this. Like, don't stress about this. There's other things in your college application that are weighted much, much more. GPA being number 1, your essays being number 2, your letters of reference, and so on down the line, right? All of those are part of it, whereas test scores are not that important, right? Having said that, it could be a path to more scholarship. We've seen merit-based aid go to students that are submitting test scores, but really this is for you to research in the schools that you're interested. So this statement is false. You don't have to do this, guys. Now, do you want to do it and put your best foot forward? Great, go for it, but don't do it in a stressed way. Like, just understand that you don't have to, right? Let me get back to a couple of these other ones. Good, we got that one. This is good to know, right? So if you have a documented learning difference, you've been diagnosed, you would know this, right? So folks that generally say, I'm not sure, you probably don't, because if you know this, you know this. Then those folks here, so 20% of the population in our group tonight, if that's you, then you have to look at everything that we say with our timing. Typically accommodations are time and a half. So if we say, I'll just make an easy one, right? On the ACT, you have 60 minutes in a section, you would have 90 minutes, right? SAT, a little bit different. We'll go into that, right? But what I want you to understand, if you have accommodations, that whatever our timing is, it's likely time and a half. Some extreme learning differences actually get double time. And you would know that, right? If you have that, you would know that. And those are things that when we get into the timing that you want to make sure you understand for yourself. So I'm looking out for that 20% to make sure we understand that. We got that. You can use any calculator on the SAT for any math problem. Love that we know that. All right, and we're going to talk about this. First problem with that statement is any calculator. When we get to the math section, I will repeat this, but you need to have an approved calculator. That is not a cell phone calculator. It can be a basic 4-function calculator. You could have a nice graphing calculator. A lot of kiddos using the TI-84 that you can use. What you cannot bring in is a calculator that can communicate with the outside world, right? Because that would basically just, impact the test integrity. If you can text somebody, hey, what's the answer to this one, right? You can't do that, right? And the other problem with this statement is the any math problem, because in the SAT, you'll see tonight, the first section is a no calculator section. You cannot use a calculator unless you have accommodations, right? And those people that know they have accommodations would know this, right? So if you don't have accommodations, if you're, in that population of basically like you're doing the test the way it's set up, then you would not be able to use a calculator for that first section. You will be able to use a calculator for the second section. Bit on that. If you're ACT, you can use a calculator on every problem. There's only one math section and you can use your calculator, right? Again, not getting too much into ACT tonight, not the objective of the program or our time tonight. Okay, so that's it. Last thing here, and I won't reveal here, hit me up about summer. And I'm not here to sell you on my summer program, but I do have a summer program. It's a 6-week program. I see some students that have gone through my winter. I've seen some students who've gone through my spring. I typically do it winter, spring, and summer. I don't do it fall because most everyone needs their taking tests. And oh, by the way, I'm coaching at that time, so it's really hard for me to put that together. But I have a 6-week program. It's a stress-free approach. We go through a lot more detail than we're going to do tonight. So folks that are just joining, I'm going to put this link in there one more time. If you want information on that, you can obviously go to my website, which I'll show you in a moment, crosswalkeducation.com. This is a separate entity from Stevenson. It is my own private company that, like I said, has been in existence long before I even started at Stevenson. And the folks at Stevenson are nice enough to allow me to, promote my company, if you will, or communicate what I'm doing via the college board or the college center's emails. But if you want information on that, and really about the parents too, like ask your parents' permission. I'll follow up this email with anyone that puts their email in there. I'll follow up the email just so you have the information. Again, I'm not here to sell you on it, but it is a successful program. I've run it for years, and students that are on here, you can ask them, what their experience has been like. It is, it's not the 24 or 48 hour programs that are out there too. It's maybe test prep light, but it also informs everything that you need to do and kind of puts you in the driver's seat, right? So again, if you're just jumping on and want more information about that, put your email in this survey, ask mom and dad if they can get if they want the email on there, put it in there. Okay, with that really gets us a good space. Here's where we are, guys. Pretty cool, pretty cool. So most folks have had some experience, but I think tonight's going to be really useful. Okay, with that, let me get back to what this looks like. If you want to jot down the my website, it's there, but I'm going to push out this link real quick, and everyone should be able to get on that link. I'll put it in the chat. Meanwhile, if you want to, jot down my contact information, you can. But let's see if you can get onto that link there. This is the objective of tonight. And I'm looking at the clock. I'm going to get you out of here at 9:30 unless you want to stay on longer. Totally fine if you want to. But you should be able to get to that test. Now, for better or for worse tonight, it's going to be a lot of me talking. Because this is, in my experience, is the most efficient way to get through this. I will be asking you lots of questions. They are open-ended questions for you to think about and you to answer on your own. Like I said, if you do have questions, chat me, interrupt me, you tell me, right? If you see something like, what? I didn't get that. Let me know, right? Let me know. This is your time tonight, guys. And, don't be afraid of all the peeps on there. If you have the question, someone else does too, right? So don't be afraid. And if you feel more comfortable, you can chat that. You can also use that, private chat if you feel more comfortable doing it that way. So with that, you should all be on this SAT practice test number 1. By the way, this is a free test that you can download. I've got the link going here. You could certainly download it. I always recommend downloading it and doing it on paper because that's what the testing experience is like. We're not doing that tonight. We're on Zoom, so we're going to make some assumptions about how you're going to do this. But this is practice test 1 of 8 full-length practice tests that are on the College Board website, not counting the practice PSATs that are on there too. This is all free. It's a great day and age. When I first started doing test prep, you had to buy everything. I'm old enough to know that you used to have to buy a CD-ROM to get some of this information. Now it's free on the website. Now there's other books you can buy. I'm happy to have that conversation another time. We're not going to do that tonight. I generally say go to the source, go to the College Board directly, get their book. If you're doing if you're doing ACT, go to the ACT Inc. directly, get their book, but they also have free tests on their website. Actually, they only keep 1 free test on their website. There's other websites that keep free tests. Lots of tests, right? Another key thing that you need to understand about tests, this is a skill. Like any skill, you get better with time. You get better with practice. Think about any skill that you've learned. I know there's musicians on here. I know there's athletes on here. I know there's people that speak foreign languages on here. Think of all those skills you've developed. It takes time. If you put in the time, you will get better. Just straight up. That's how it works, right? Don't sit there and think, I'm a bad test taker and I'm never going to be a good test taker. Well, at one point in your life, you were probably a bad, whatever, fill in the blank that you're good at now, guitar player. Put in the time, you're good. You were a bad, baseball player. Now you're probably pretty good. You put in the time, right? Or anything that you've put the time into doing, you've become better. So with that, practice these tests, right? Tonight is going to be the walkthrough of this, so you know what Tuesdays to expect. Get your score on that Tuesday one, see what you need to work on, practice other tests, right? Like I said, there's 8 full-length practice tests that you can download right from the College Board website. What if you took all 8? Seriously, here's one we'll look through tonight, but if you took the other 7, that would be amazing practice, right? And not just take them, score them, understand what you need to work on. We have an expression in my class, we love weaknesses. We say, yay, weakness, right? You find a weakness, that's something you need to work on. Work on that, get better at it. Turn that weakness into something that's maybe not a strength, but not a weakness, right? This is like growth mindset stuff. This is growth mindset 101. I'm not good at test taking yet, right? That yet allows you to do the work. You do the work, you get better. Oh, by the way, if you have a weakness and you identify it tonight and you're taking the test on Tuesday, don't worry about it, right? Those are the questions you guess on because you're not going to be stressed tonight, right? We go through it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really bad at whatever, this vocabulary kind of question, or I'm really bad at, whatever, graphing functions, whatever it is for you, right? Okay, those are the ones you guess and move on because you're not going to spend the time. Okay, so with that, let me ask a question before I get into this. Does anybody have issues accessing this practice test? Chat me if you cannot get to this test. I'll put the link in again just to make sure we're all good. Oops, I got to chat that to everyone. Forgive me. Chat that to everyone. Okay, excellent. Okay, so, whoopsie, I didn't mean to do that, guy. That's not the one I wanted to do. Okay, I should be sharing that now. Okay, good. So last chance. Does anybody have any issue with getting to this practice test 1? Hit me via chat. By the way, does anybody have any questions before we start? Okay, good. We're jumping in. Here we go. Okay, so one of the things that I won't go through tonight is kind of the opening, and I'll just give you a little framework of that. I honestly don't know what time you're supposed to show up, right? Folks that are doing this on Tuesday, hit me via chat. What time are you supposed to arrive to school? It's usually pretty early, right? Because I don't even know that, right? Okay, I think around 7 is about right. Yeah, 7, whatever it is, yeah? Okay, excellent. Folks are chatting me back, 7:15. Okay, why so early? Well, it's gonna take about 40 to 45 minutes to actually go through the whole setting up your bubble sheet, registering, getting the proctors ready. So there's this kind of weird space, right? That's the time of the morning where you're just kind of like relaxing, right? Don't let any of the, the little bubbling or what it stress you out, right? Stress is the enemy. All right, say this with me. Don't say it with me. You can say it to yourself. Stress is the enemy of test performance. I'm going to say it again. Stress is the enemy of test performance, right? So say that over in your head. So just relax. Get to that happy space into your brain where you're like, you know what? This is a crossword puzzle, or this is a Sudoku, or this is a game of chess, whatever space that your head needs to get into to be like, all right, I'm kind of loose, I'm kind of ready, right? I like to use the analogy. A lot of you guys know this. I'm a coach and I'm an athlete. I like to use the analogy of the big game, right? Where, how do you get in that headspace of the big game, and how do you perform for that big game? Well, of course, a lot of that preparation comes before, but really we can talk about the night before. The night before, don't study any of this stuff. Relax, get some good sleep, right? Get some good food to eat, chill out with whatever, makes you relax. If that's, I normally say in pre-pandemic times, hanging with friends. If you can do that, great. If you can't do that, whatever. Maybe it's just watching Netflix. Maybe it's just reading a book. Maybe it's just playing video. I don't know what it is for you, but make that night before chill so that you walk in at this 7 to 7:15 early time. And most of us are just like kind of groggy and waking up. Make that a relaxed approach to your morning. Now, there's other folks out here, and I've read test booklets. They're like, eat a big breakfast because you have a long test. I'm like, whatever you need to do to get you in the right space. If you're a big breakfast eater, then do that. Some people aren't. Somebody's like, I eat a big breakfast and then I just fall asleep because my body's digesting. Then no, you, right? Then don't do that, right? Okay, so anyway, I'm kind of getting, the night before we're doing this, here's test day. You're coming in at probably 7:15 because the test starts at 7:30-ish. It won't start at 7:30. You're actually doing your bubble filling. Here's your name, here's your address, all that stuff at 7:30, right? Test probably won't get going until likely 8:15, depending on the room you're in, depending on the proctor. If there's any issues going on, don't let it bother you, right? You're in test taking mode, you're relaxed, you're chill, you're not stressed, because, say it with me, stress is the enemy of test performance. Here's where we go. All right, this is what you've been waiting for, right? You're like, dude, he's still talking about stuff. Hopefully it's useful, right? Hopefully it's useful. So much of this is mindset, guys, right? So much of this test is about where your headspace is on test day. All right, here's where you start. And this is where we're going to spend our time. You start with the reading test. I'm going to pull my calculator out, and you can do that with me too. Folks that have been with programs before know this is what we do. We crunch some numbers, right? One of the key numbers you have to crunch is about timing, right? Now, keep in mind, folks that have testing accommodations, your number crunching is different, right? So when I say 65 minutes, that's actually going to be 65 plus half of 65, which is 32 and a half. So you're gonna get what, 97 and a half minutes for this. So your math is a little bit different, but I'm gonna do the math here. I'm gonna say 65 minutes. We're gonna make that into seconds because I wanna know how many seconds do I have per question. 65 minutes times 60 seconds is, I did that wrong. 3,900 seconds. Now, seconds per question, I'm going to say 3,900 seconds divided by 52. You have 75 seconds per question. The reading test, if you're writing this down, write this down. The reading test is a little bit different, right? We could say 75 seconds per question, but this is one section, and this is what we're going to walk through, that I'm going to suggest you do not by question, but by passage. Because in 65 minutes, again, if you have accommodations, you have longer, there's 5 passages. Let's do that math. 65 divided by 5. You have 13 minutes per passage. Here's the mindset. This is 5 mini 13-minute tests, right? Anyone that's been an athlete and done interval training, this is 5 passages on a 13-minute interval. Swimmers, runners, you know what I'm talking about, right? So 5 13-minute passages, right? Now you have the passage. Here's what I'm going to suggest. And we'll look at this real quick. I'm going to suggest that you can get through that passage in 2 to 3 minutes. I won't get into strategies tonight, right? Because I don't want to bog you down. But the idea is you move quickly through the passage. Right? To give yourself then 52 questions divided by 5, there's 10 or 11 questions per passage. Now, if we take 2 to 3 minutes to read the passage, you now have 1 minute per question. That's what we do. Right? That's what we do. So as we go through this, right, read the directions right now. If you haven't done it yet, read them now. They're not going to change. You will not have to read them on Tuesday. This is part of what we do tonight, right? We read the directions now. They're not going to change. Folks that are just walking into the test that have never taken it before are going to read the directions. Meanwhile, you're like, nope, I'm ready to score points, right? So read the directions. I need to get a drink of water. I've been talking a lot. Sorry. Rock and roll. Okay, those directions aren't going to change. All right, what else is not going to change? You will likely start with a passage that is fictional. And I say likely. I can't say that with 100% certainty. Generally, it's the truth, right? So here you have to read like you're reading for English class, right? What are you looking for? Well, you're looking for, and this is a case of characters. Who are the characters? What are they all about? One thing that I would suggest that you definitely focus on is, let me gotta move some windows around. Sometimes I can't highlight very well, but you do want to take a quick peek at the blurb there, right? The blurb will set your kind of lens for which you're reading this, right? And I've never looked at this one. Passage from Lydia Minetoya, The Strangeness of Beauty. Setting is Japan in 1920, and we have Chie, if I'm pronouncing that right, and her daughter Naomi are members of the House of Fuji noble family. Okay, you need to put on a lens of this is 1920 Japan noble family. So whatever lens that is for you, you've got to think about that, right? Because now we get into this and we start to see, okay, that's the framework of this reading, right? That's what we're looking through. Again, guys, we're not going to go through every problem. We're not going to go through every passage, but this is the passage, and then we start to get these questions. So skim through that passage, and then you get to take your time on the questions. Here's the key. Here's the key strategy for reading, and this is how you're going to get correct answers. This is how you're going to score points. You're going to score points by connecting the evidence in the correct answer to what is in the passage. I want to remind you guys, this is a multiple choice test. The correct answer is there. And there's only one correct answer. There's no debate, right? This is not a test where you can go back to the teacher and be like, hey, on number 17, couldn't the answer also be C? Like, I know you said it was B, but couldn't it also be C? Not on this test, right? The test writers take major time and effort to make sure there's only one right answer. So there's no debate. So the one right answer is a very simple like question you can ask yourself. Which answer is most supported by the evidence in the passage? So here's the dance. You go from the answer choices back to the passage, and you're literally looking at every single word. Does this word match? No, get rid of it. Does this word match? Yes. Okay, hold on to it, right? And you're doing that for every single question. Right? And again, guys, this is the walkthrough. We're not going to go through every single detailed strategy. This is not the time to do that. This is the time to say, get a kind of head on what's going on. I do want to point out that a very common SAT question is this number 4 with a quick follow-up of number 5. And I went too fast on that. Look at number 4. Number 4 is typically like, what is the author saying? And this is what the author is saying. In this case, it's the reaction Akira fears most from Chie. And then the follow-up is, where's the line of evidence? Because this is the skill they're trying to see, all right? We back way up, we say, okay, why does this section of the test exist? Oh, by the way, this is the one section on the test that has changed the least in the 20 years that I've been doing this. It's the same kind of thing. Because why? Because when you go to college, the number one thing you're going to do in college is read. And what you have to be able to do is read a passage and then pull out the evidence. That's the skill. So this is what they're asking you to do. Right? So we can prepare for that. We know that as we're peeking, okay, this question, but it's also connected to this question, right? And there are others that will be like that. So again, the goal is to skim through the passage, get an idea of what's there, hit those questions, match the answer choices back to the passage. We're going to skim through this, right? Your second passage, and here's where I can't say this is what the passage is, right? Second passage, again, focus on this, right? The passage content is limited. It's not like they're going to put any random passage in there, but you don't know what the passages are. Right? Here's another reason why you shouldn't be studying the night before. This is not a memorization test. This is not a final exam that you can, memorize the stuff the night before and spit it out on the test the next day. You can't, which is why you should chill and relax and get your brain ready to navigate this, right? Two of these passages, and it's probably, here we go, is going to have a data set. It could be a line graph. It could be a bar graph. It could be a table of information. Well, what do you think they're going to ask you? They're going to ask you how the data connects to the evidence of the passage. This is what you would call maybe one of the science passages. By the way, that's a whole section on the ACT. It's 2 of the 5 passages on the SAT. We're going to scroll through this. We're walking through this. This is your dress rehearsal. We're not focused on every single question, but you go through this. Again, here we go. Look at that. Passage 16. Wait a second. I missed it. Yeah, look at 16 and 16 and 17. The passage indicates that the assumption made by gift givers in lines 41 through 44 may be blah. And then 17 is a direct follow-up. Which line has that? So you're going back to the lines, you're asking which word most connects with the evidence in the passage. Our next passage in this particular test, there we go. We have a data set. Anytime you're reading data, two very quick questions to ask yourself. What are the data points and what is the trend? Right here, the data points are, this is a percentage of an organism's DNA on my top part. On this column here, we're looking at, okay, these are all different, I guess, organisms, right? What are the data points? In this case, DNA and organisms. Second question is, what are the trends? What's happening? Well, this number seems to be maybe stable. Uh-oh, big jump here, octopus, then down here. Maybe it goes down and then up, right? What are the trends? What are the data points? How does it support the passage, right? Good. And oh, by the way, we are on the third passage. If we take this as 5 passages in a 13-minute interval, you should do this with your timing. You should have a watch, or you should position yourself near a classroom clock, because if the test, let's say it starts automatically, it won't, but let's say it starts automatically at 8. Well, at 8:13, you should be ready for the next passage. At 8:26, you should be ready for the next passage, and so on, right? Those with testing and combination, that number changes, right? But now we're going and we're seeing, we shouldn't get to that next one. I'm waiting for one because you know one of these is coming. Okay, so this one seems to be a little bit more historic, right? Or maybe it's a little bit fictional too, adapted from a book. So yeah, maybe a little bit fictional too. One of the ones that's going to come, and in this case, it might be our next one. Again, guys, we'll walk through. We're not focusing on specific questions yet. Here it is. One of your 5, in this case, it's the last one, but one of your 5 passages is going to be a paired passage. Ask yourself in your head right now, if you are a test writer and you want your student to read 2 different passages, what question are you going to write? You should be saying some kind of compare and contrast. That's it. That's exactly what it is. So the way this passage works is let's say you have 10 or 11. I don't know how many here. I haven't looked at this, but your first 3-ish, 3 to 4, will be about the first passage. Your second 3-ish to 4-ish will be about the second passage. And your last couple, look at these last couple, right? Look at this one. The last several are about comparing and contrasting both of them, right? The author of passage 2 would say, what about passage 1? Very typical setup, right? And then they ask you about the evidence for that one. And 52 is what about 1 is about 2. That's it. That's the game. That is the game, okay? So again, reading section, 5 passages, 13 minutes per. Final point on reading. This is the one section of the test that I would not jump around very much. You can jump around within the passage. It's okay to hold a question and maybe come back to it later. But what you don't want to do is get to the very end of this passage and then have to go back to the first passage, because you kind of have to reset yourself. You'll see every other section we're going to do tonight, you can jump around all you want, right? But I would say in this particular section of the test, stick on the passage, give yourself the 13 minutes, and then come back within that passage if you have questions. But when you're ready to move on and don't look back, right? Now, if you do get to the end of the test, you have like 4 or 5 minutes left, okay, that's time you can play with, right? But in general, stick with the passage. All right, no questions on that, no comments on that. We good here? Right? Keep in mind that the proctor will say, you got to stop. You can't move on until they say you can move on. And what we're going to move on next is a different type of reading, right? Sometimes they give you a break here, and this depends on the proctor. Sometimes you have to go through the first 2, you have to do the whole verbal, and then you get a break. You kind of get a, reset the brain. What I would say though, whatever is going on in the test, when you're going to that new section, just reset your brain. Just say, new section. That is in the past. I'm not going to stress about whatever I did there. I'm not going to celebrate whatever I did because it was super easy. This is a new test, right? A brand new test, and we just reset, right? We start over again. Okay, now this guy, I'm going to do the same thing. This is a little bit different, longer directions. Please read the directions. Then we're going to crunch some numbers. All right, let me know if you need more time with that. Seems to be we're good, right? Okay. Different reading style here. Looks like passages, but it's different. You're not asking for as much comprehension as you are essentially serving as an editor. So what you can consider these as, rough drafts of something. And content is less important. What is important is the grammar and how they use it and the structures that they use. Structures meaning the words that match the flow of the passage, the sentences that fit within a paragraph, the general, vocabulary and style that they're using to basically communicate a message. Here's the thing with this section. Generally, it's okay to think about the shortest answer as, I'm not going to say the best. It's not a strategy, guys. It's a guideline, right? It's a guideline generally because we want to be more concise. We want to be more precise with our language. So gravitate towards the shortest answers. I'm not going to say that that's the right answer every time because this is what happened. That's the strategy. That's a proven strategy previously. Now, once folks like me get a hold of that strategy, start teaching our students that, then the test writers switch it on us, right? And then they say, okay, we're going to put in a short answer that's actually wrong. Having said that, you can gravitate towards those shortest answers because they're often the most concise way to kind of get your point across, which is what we want to do when we communicate. That's what we want to do with this is it, the standard written English, right? The conventions of standard written English. Keep in mind on the grammar ones, I do want to focus on this. There are no change options, which means your choice A is the way it's written is fine. And those are generally on the grammar ones. But before we get into more of those strategies, let me pull back a little bit. Let's look timing. We're gonna do the same thing. This one we're gonna do per question. We don't have to worry about by passage, right? We'll do some by passage too, but really this is, you kind of hit these questions as you go. You don't have to read the whole passage and then go back to the questions. You should hit them as they go, right? So 35 minutes times 60 seconds, 2,100 seconds. Divided by the 44 questions, you have 47.72727272, right? So let's call it a little under 48 seconds per question. Right? Now, in this one, there are 4 passages. We have, let's do that, 35 divided by 4. So you have 8 3/4 minutes per passage, right? You have 8 minutes and 45 seconds per passage. One more number crunch, the 44 questions. 44 questions in 4 passages, you got 11 questions per passage. Right? Now, let me show you how this works. It is not reading comprehension, right? Basically, the way it works is you should be reading this. You don't have to read it in too much detail until you get to this place here, right? This place here indicates, okay, here's your question. Now this, if we were to go into the weeds on this, this is what's called a vocabulary and context question. This is probably more of a structure question. What's the right word that fits the flow? But what you're asked to do is figure out which vocabulary word here fits the right flow. And again, we're not going to worry about questions and going into this detail, but that's kind of a structure thing. Question 2, totally structure, right? This is asking you which of the following gives the most relevant detail to support, here's the question way down here, right? To support whatever's going on here, right? So what you have to focus on is which of these answer choices is the most relevant detail. Here's your clue right there. Most relevant detail. Anytime there's a most, that should be ding, 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 ding. I got to focus on that, right? Because that means there's only one. There's only one. Most is a superlative. That means there's only one, right? We get down to 3. This looks like it's more grammar related. Let me take a quick moment on the grammar, right? The grammar, again, there's no change, but what you're looking for in the grammar is the, and I always tell students, read it out loud to yourself, right? And you're probably not gonna be able to do that on test day because you're sitting next to someone taking the test. They're like, dude, shut up. Don't read that out loud. Read it in your head. Which one sounds the best, right? Now, if we're going to work in the details of this, which we're not going to do tonight because I'm not going to stress you out, we go through which of the common grammar errors are most common. Which of the errors on grammar are most common on this test? And we can boil it down to about 9 of them. That's really it, right? 9 of them are about 90 to 95% of all grammar errors. So we start to look for those. But for now, don't worry about that. Just say which of these answer choices sounds the best. And I'm already looking at C, just saying, it's too long. Probably too long, right? But again, we won't get into those details. Another grammar thing, we got a little punctuation situation, right? Look at that. Which is the best punctuation? Most of the punctuation is pretty simple. And if you are in a place where you're like, gosh, I'm really bad at punctuation, yay, weakness. Don't spend any time on this one, right? We know we have about 48 seconds a question. If you were just like, I'm not good at punctuation, guess on this one, take the 45 seconds that you would have spent here and deploy it somewhere else where you know you can get that point, right? The name of the game is getting points, right? When we close tonight, I'm going to talk about playing the numbers. That's the most important number. The numbers we're talking about tonight in terms of timing are great, but we're going to close tonight with the playing the numbers, and I'm going to show you what that is. And it's all about getting to the number of correct answers that you need to get to the score you want. So those are times where you're like, gosh, you know what? I'm not so good at punctuation. I'm not going to spend any time on that one, right? That's the game, right? That's how you get through this test, because you don't want to leave any questions, unanswered, right? We already know that. We're going to fill in answers for everything, but you don't want to leave any questions on the table that you didn't get to. So you can come back to this later, right? A word on that. I would circle in the test booklet. I would still fill in a bubble on the bubble sheet, because if you get to the end of the test and the proctor's like, time, and you haven't filled in an answer, if you're like going back and time's called, filling in answers, you might get busted. I don't know. But even worse, if you don't fill in a bubble for an answer, let's say here, this is number 4, right? You don't fill in a 4 and you go to 5, you start to work on 5 and you go up 5, great. 5, I think is, I don't know what it is, but let's say it's A. You go back to your bubble sheet and you fill in 5 for 4. And all of a sudden you get to like number 40 and you realize you're working on 40, but you're filling in for 39, and you have that, oh crap in your pants moment. Oh my gosh, I got to go back. So don't do that, right? Fill in a bubble for the 4, circle in your test booklet so you know you're going to come back to it. One of the huge strategies that we'd, I'd spend more time on if we did, is you should rip apart the test booklet. Nobody cares what you do in the test booklet. It's just going to go in the trash after. Nobody's going to check your work. Nobody's going to ask you to show the work, especially when you get to math, right? So rip it apart, right? Use it, write notes. Yes, no. Use that as your sandbox. Get messy on that. Answer sheet, super neat, super nice. Test booklet, get messy, right? Get messy. All right. So as we go through this, you'll see that the passages really don't matter. The content, it's all rough drafts of stuff. So all the stuff we talked about in the reading section, don't worry about, right? What you're focused on is the grammar and the structure. What's the right word? What's the right grammar structure? Okay, by the way, there's going to be some data sets in here. Well, what are these data sets doing in a rough draft of something? What you're likely going to be asked to do, and let's see, okay, what's the choice that most accurately and effectively represents the information in the graph? All you're asked to do is, this is basically a structure question. What does the author need to say in the passage structurally to match the data point? And usually that's like, what's the right data point that they're using, right? And that's it, right? This is kind of a sneaky way to get some data analysis into what's really editing, right? And I won't get cynical about that, but basically in a nutshell, this I think is the SAT's way of copying the ACT, right? SAT came out with a new version in 2016 that basically copied the ACT. Why? Because they saw they saw customers moving towards the ACT, right? What do businesses do when customers go to the competitor? They try and copy the competitor, right? Again, I'll get cynical on that one, but as we're walking through this, just know this: you're looking for the right grammar, the right structure to match what is being communicated. That's really it. That's all we're doing on this one, right? Folks that are good readers, folks that are good writers, you'll be really good at this, right? Oh, by the way, the best test prep is reading. As I'm going through this, I'll tell you, you've seen the reading passages, you've seen the English passages. The more exposure you had to read, I don't care what you read, right? Read comic books, read graphic novels, read whatever, trashy magazines. I don't care what it is. Just read. The more you read, the more you see these structures, the more comfortable you are in this environment. So folks that haven't been doing a lot of reading, don't do that for Tuesday. But as you get through this, start thinking about reading. And folks that are reading, stuff that's too easy, challenge yourself, right? Find other stuff. This is, I deal with my kids, right? I've got a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. They're like, I don't want to read. I was like, well, you just haven't found anything good to read. I don't like reading. You just haven't found anything good to read. So let's find something good to read. What do you want to read? Want to read horror stories? Let's go for it, right? Whatever you want to read. Anyway, that is the English section. Questions on that? Hit me up via chat. Hit me up via chat. Excellent question coming in. Are there certain patterns in the answer sheet? No, there aren't. It's randomized. It's totally randomized. And you may have heard stories of someone's like, yes, I drew a wave and I got a perfect score. Great. That's the chances of that. No. What I will say is It is randomized, and so the distribution of the answers should be very similar. There's a follow-up question that came in, like if we answer A for 4 questions in a row, I'd be cautious. But I wouldn't strategize around the answer choices, right? If you think that's the right answer, go for it, right? But yeah, good point. If there's 4 in a row that are the same answer, you could be cautious about that. The other thing I will say is if you are guessing, I always recommend you guess the same letter every time. Why do I say that? Okay, if you're guessing, let's say you guess on 10 total, the whole test, right? 52 reading, 44 of the writing, there's 58 in the math. Let's say you guess on 10 of them, right? If you guess the same letter every time, you got a 1 out of 4 chance of getting the right answer. Over 10, there's a chance you might get 2 points doing that if you guess the same letter, right? Chances are it might pop up. If you randomize your guessing, you might not catch those 2, right? If that makes sense. There is no pattern. I would be cautious if you've got a lot of the same letter in a row. And if you are guessing, guess the same letter, right? But what I wouldn't say is, start drawing pictures with your answer bubbles. I have heard that before. And I laugh, and I also cry with the people that have done that. All right, good. Any other questions on the English? Our timing is awesome. We're about to jump into the math. We're not even 9 o'clock yet, right? I'm going to shoot for probably around 9:15, 9:20 to get through this. Then we'll open up to questions, but fire questions in, guys. Don't be bashful. Okay, so this one, if you're with me on this, it's going to be hard for me, unless I really make it smaller, to put all of the directions on here. So we'll do it in 2 parts, right? So read these directions first, then we'll crunch some numbers, just like we've done. Read these directions first. In a moment, I'll show you the bottom part, but read those first. Pretty simple so far. You're probably looking on your own screen too, but I'm going to scroll down. Here's reference information. And I have to laugh at this. I laugh and cry on this one. Look at this reference information. Like the likely scenario is you already know this stuff here. Hopefully you're seeing my cursor. You know all this information already. You might know the special right triangle stuff too. A lot of students that are good at geometry, have done geometry, will remember that. This whole block of information is volume. There may be 1 volume question in the whole test. Look at all this real estate they dedicated to this, right? This stuff is helpful, right? And it's going to be hard for me to highlight. I can't get this highlight exactly on because this is a PDF online, but this stuff down here is pretty helpful. Some of the stuff you probably already know, but this is why I cry at this. Because the student that is going to walk into Tuesday's test that didn't come tonight and has never looked at the test, they're going to be like, oh, this is awesome. There's so much information for me there. I don't have to, maybe I don't have to know this stuff. And as they go through the test, they're going to go like, okay, number 1, I'm good. 2, 3, 4. Okay, number 5, I'm stuck. I'm going to go back to the reference. What's happening while they go back to the reference? Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Time is ticking away, right? Now they go back to the reference and chances are, okay, if they get something, great. That's helpful. Great. They're going to get a point. But if they go back to the reference and like, oh, there's nothing here for me. They've just lost whatever it is, 5 or 6 seconds, while you are scoring points, right? That's it. So know what's here. I'm not asking you to memorize any of this, but know what's here. What's here? Area, special right triangle, volume, a little bit about circles, a little about triangles. That's it, right? That's it. So it's mostly geometry stuff. In fact, it's all geometry stuff, right? So if you're on an algebra problem, you shouldn't come back here. You really shouldn't come back here. Okay, let me cycle back up to here really quick. This is the no calculator section. I want to remind you. Let's crunch some numbers. 25 minutes. Again, folks, with accommodations, the timing is different. 25 times 60 is 1,500 divided by 20 questions, 75 seconds per question. 75 seconds per question. Here's the key with math. Again, if you're writing it down, you need to write this down. The questions progressively get harder as you go within subsections. I'll explain what subsections mean in a second. But here's the thing. The deeper you get into the section of the test, the harder the questions are. So with those seconds that you have, you should spend less time on the easy questions, which are the ones in the beginning of the section, to allow yourself more time to spend on the harder questions, which come at the end of the section. Very simple, right? This is where we talk about time is money. Time is a currency. You spend it, you save it, right? If you are going to spend it, then get the points. If it's an easy question, spend less of it so that you can save it for the harder questions. I would venture to guess just about everyone on this call could do every single question correctly if time were infinite. Right? If I said you got 3 days to figure this out, and I was like, not even look up stuff, you got 3 days to figure it, you could probably get the right answer for 95 to 98% of them. Right? But here's the thing, it's all about the clock. It's all about the clock. It's how many questions you can get in this timing. Right? Now, 75 seconds per question on this. And as we go through this, you'll see, okay, by the way, no calculator in this section. Right? Did I want to highlight one other thing? No, we're not going to worry about it. We'll keep moving. I was going to say, wait, yeah, one thing. If it says in the drawing, note figure not drawn to scale, this is a good thing to kind of write down because it's not in the directions. If it says figure not drawn to scale, then you can't eyeball it. You can't guesstimate. You can't kind of go through that process and be like, yeah, that triangle is kind of like that one. However, if it doesn't say that, then you can assume it's drawn to scale. Right? That's not in the directions there, but that's usually a good assumption. All right, notice that we're going to start. This is a pretty easy algebra one, right? And maybe a little harder algebra one. We're dealing with the square root, but now we got a word problem. By the way, word problems are just story problems. They're just reading problems. Key strategy on word problems. Just write down the information in a different order that works for you. Because here's the thing with word problems. Word problems, the challenge with word problems is to create the equation to solve the problem. Once you have the equation, the math is pretty easy, right? So get through that word problem by writing the information down. Folks that have worked with me before know we talk about translating, right? Translating words. If this is the sum of two numbers, okay, that's addition. If it's shared equally, that's division, right? If it's of something else, that's multiplication, right? So we take out those words and we translate them into an equation. We have the equation, then the math is easy, right? Don't be afraid of word problems. Use that growth mindset, right? I'm not good at word problems yet. So many students are afraid of word problems, which is why, new and modern textbooks call them story problems, because that's much less stressful, isn't it? Once they're story problems, right? I don't know, maybe not for you. Like some of you looking at Kathy and the repair technician, like, oh my gosh, it's actually pretty easy. All right, notice as we get deeper into this section, this one's a doozy. Woo, look at all that stuff. Some of you are like, what? Some of you are like, oh, I'm going to eat that up, right? That's super easy, all right? That one maybe not so hard. We're getting into the end of what's the multiple choice, right? Remember I said subsection. Okay, so here it is. This is the no calculator section. And within the no calculator section, there's two subsections. The first subsection is multiple choice, which you're seeing. And as you see, we're going to get harder and we're going to get harder once we get to number 15. This should probably be the hardest one. And oh, by the way, it's never like, easy, 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 medium, 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 hard, 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 hard. It's usually like easy, easy, medium, medium, hard, medium, hard, hard, medium, hard, hard, right? So it's a little bit of a dance, right? It also depends on what your skill set is, right? If you're like, dude, I'm dialing algebra, question 13 is probably a pretty hard one for most, but if you're dialing algebra, good, totally do that one, right? Whereas we get to 14, also algebra, you'd be pretty dialed with that one. And 15, also algebra, you'd be pretty dialed with that one, right? So if you're dialed in algebra, even these hard ones, not so hard. Look what happens though. You need to be prepared for this. Once you get to number 15 on the multiple choice, boom, they give you a whole other set of directions, which we need to read right now because you don't want to spend time. There's a whole page of directions. You've gotten 2 full pages of directions in the math test. Don't read them on test day. Read them now. All right, so I'm going to shut up. You should be reading this left column over here, and I want you to answer in your head. If you want to chat me, you totally can. But here's the thing. These are problems you have to solve to get the number, and then when you get the number, you bubble in the number in the bubble sheet like this. But there are some limitations to what you can bubble in. Read those directions and ask yourself, what can you not bubble in? There's at least 4 things that you cannot bubble in. Ask yourself that. I'll scroll down a little bit in case you're working off my screen here. And if you know and want to chat back, you can go ahead and chat. What is one type of number you cannot bubble in? Or what is one answer choice that you would not be able to bubble in? Good, I got one good. Yeah, okay, they're coming in. Yeah, you guys are dialed. Yeah, first one coming in, you cannot bubble in negative numbers. So what does that mean? If you get a negative answer, bubble in the positive? I don't know. In a time crunch, yeah, bubble in the positive. Generally, no, I'd say, retry the problem. But generally the problems aren't set up with negative numbers. So that would be a weird thing if you got a negative number. Yeah, cannot bubble in. Another one came in. You cannot bubble in mixed numbers. Look at this. This is number 5. And this is where, again, folks that have worked with me before, we talk about the stereotypical math teacher, right? The stereotypical math teacher would say, if you get to an improper fraction, you need to simplify for a mixed number, right? Improper fraction meaning that the numerator is greater than the denominator, right? In this case, fine. Go ahead and bubble in that improper fraction, right? Go ahead and bubble in the decimal with that if you want. You just can't bubble in the mixed number. The computer will be programmed to recognize that, in this example, 3.5 or 7/2, fine. Both of those are fine. But 31 over 2, you're like, that's 3.5. It doesn't work, right? And this is the thing, guys. You don't want to get caught on these little technicalities, right? You don't want to get caught on some little, hiccup where you did all of the work and you got the right answer. You just didn't bubble it in right. Oh gosh, that's the worst, right? That's the worst kind of careless error you can make. All right, anything else coming in? So far only 2, right? And there's really only 3 things you can't. The 4th is a little bit of a wrinkle. Notice there's only 4 columns. So you cannot bubble in any number that has more than 4 digits, if you will, right? If you get the answer of 10,000, you can't bubble in 10,000, right? So watch out for that. And the last thing you want to look out for, coming in. Yep, good. Last one is a repeated decimal. Here's what I'm going to suggest, that you carry it all the way out to the very end, right? I hate the example that they provide because people are like, oh my God, that's satanic. I guess it is, but the 0.666, right? Now, what you would probably do on a regular math test would be like a 0.67 and round it up and then leave that last column blank, right? You're like, it's a 0.67, right? But what the computer's going to read that is 0.670. And 0.670 is not the same as 0.666666, right? So if you have a repeated decimal, just take it out to the last column. That's the easiest way to get around that. All right, one more little strategy, and we definitely have time for it. We're not looking at an answer bubble, but the answer bubbles are all multiple choice, and then here there's a box of, in this case, 5 grid ins. Try this if you want. This is a very detailed strategy, and it may only help you with a couple seconds, but that couple seconds could be another question that you could get to, right? And folks that have worked with me before know that we call this the laundry technique, right? When you're new to laundry, do you just say, I'm going to wash one shirt and dry one shirt, and then I'm going to wash one shirt and then dry one shirt? No. You're like, I'm going to do all of my shirts, right? Assuming they're same color or something, all at the same time, right? So what I'm going to recommend that you do is do all of your solutions first in your test booklet, and then bubble all 5 in, right? When we get to the next one, you'll see there's going to be more bubble in, so it's going to be a 4 and 4. But that way you're in bubble mode and you're going to be good about bubbling and you're going to be dialed in bubbling. So solve. Is that 5? Solve. Bubble. Right? Sounds funny to say, right? Okay, so with that, you could maybe save a little bit of time. Now, if you are a slow mover, I maybe not recommend that. Right? I may not recommend that because if you do all of your solving and then the proctor calls time, you haven't bubbled anything in. Your call on that, right? It's not going to save you a tremendous amount of time, but a couple seconds here and a couple seconds there could be the difference between an extra point and not, right? Your call on that, though. Your call on that. Okay, good. Again, don't read these directions. Know that when you get to number 16, you got to bubble these in. But look what happens. We reset to easy. Right? So we went multiple choice, easy, medium, hard. We get to number 16, we reset easy, and we go back up to medium and hard, right? So know where you are in the tests. This is huge on the math. It's huge on the whole test, but definitely on math. Know where you are in the test, right? Because 16 looks pretty easy. You're like, oh, I can do that right now. I can do that in a couple seconds. Great, you have 75 seconds. If you can do this in 10 seconds, you now have 65 seconds to figure out 17, because you're like, what, 17? Maybe not too bad, but me, 19, I'm like trig, SOHCAHTOA. I can get through a SOHCAHTOA. Beyond that, I never did anything beyond SOHCAHTOA in my math, but I can get through these. right? Because I'm going to have the time. I'm going to have the time to do my SOHCAHTOA on 19, right? And on 20, I'm going to like, I might just plug in some numbers for the X there, plug and chug some variables. One more wrinkle on the math that I will say is a legitimate strategy. Let's go back to the multiple choice. Notice what we have, and let me see if I can come up with a good example. Here's a good example. Number 8. I don't know if it'll work exactly with this because they give you the G of 4, but notice that the answer choices are generally organized. In this case, it's greatest to least, usually least to greatest. Don't forget, this is a multiple choice test. The correct answer is here. Put in the answer into the problem. Do the reverse order, right? This is one of the skills we talk about in my courses. Do the reverse order. Put the number back into the problem, right? And I'm not sure if it's going to work with that one. We're not going to spend time with that, but that is a huge strategy. Don't forget, and this is another thing you should be writing down. This is a multiple choice test, not the grid, of course, but every multiple choice question, the writer gives you the correct answer. They give you the correct answer. Don't forget that. Okay, so we've done the 20 no calculator. We're going to stop. You're going to reset the brain. Okay, here's a new math section. And by the way, this is the point in the test that most students are like the brain's melting. Not you though, you're ready, right? You're going to reset. You're going to say, okay, I have a whole new test to do. Deep breath, reset the head, reset the brain. Tell yourself, we're going to start over again. Look what we have. A whole other page of directions. Oh, by the way, it's the same thing. The only difference is number 1. This time you can use a calculator. Quick bit on the calculator. If you're using a calculator for every single question, you're probably going to spend too much time. That's the way the test is designed. And I'm talking about every calculation, you'll probably run out of time. All right. But look at all these directions, the same. Then look at this. We start easy. And again, we're going quick, guys, because we're just walking through this. We're not going to focus on specific problems. We're just kind of getting our head around how this works. And this is going to be a big section. There's going to be 30 multiple choice. Here's a good little signal to look out for. Notice they give you this long line with a triangle, and they say questions 9 and 10 refer to this information. There are students that are not going to read that. By the way, the math test is a reading test. It's really a reading test, right? We talked about word problems. That's a reading test. It's a reading test because this is a reading skill. If you do number 10 without recognizing that this arrow points you back to this information here, you're gonna be like, I can't do number 10. I don't have enough information. So read it that says, okay, I need this information here. Right? We're going through, we're gonna get gradually a little bit harder, right? Here's a data set we gotta interpret. Here's another data set we got to interpret, right? Here's another situation in which the information refers to here, questions 15 and 16. Because if you look at 16, you're like, I don't know what they're talking about, right? And we get to 17, we're rolling on, 18, 19, and we'll go all the way to 30, right? We're gonna go fast through this. Because I do want to leave some questions at the end. All right, here we go, 22 and 23. Look out for that, right? Lots of data here. And I'm going to take a pause when we get to our number 30. These ones should be the hardest ones. 28, 29, and 30. Parabolas, probably difficult, maybe not for you. And what happens? Whoa, this is crazy. That's a typo on this. I don't know what you're seeing on your version, but these are just basically the directions. Which directions are they? The same directions we saw before. This is the grid in. Let me pause real quick. If we see a question with an information not provided response, and it is the first question with this type of response, should we be inclined to choose that answer prior to attempting the problem? Great question. I'm going to say it depends. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Great question. I won't shout out who asked it unless you want me to, but let me repeat the question. If we see a question with and here's the quotes, information not provided response, and it is the first question with this type of response, should we be inclined to choose that answer prior to attempting the problem? And I'll say it depends. Depends on a couple things. How quickly you're moving. If that's something that you're like, I don't want to spend time on, I need to get points in other areas that are easier for me, then I would say, yeah, maybe. But generally I would say no. Don't look at that, that information not provided and gravitate towards that. Do your work, right? Do your work. If you do your work and you've done it in the time that you have, you'll be good, right? Then you won't fall into any of those traps that they're trying to set for you. Remember, and here's the ultimate goal that I like to take my students is to say, think like a test writer. What's the test writer going to do? How's the test writer going to distract you from what is the right answer that's there, right? And if that's their strategy, know that, understand that. So do your work. I hope that answered that question. If not, let me know. Okay, so we've gone all the way to, look at this. We got to get to 37 and 38, right? So what did I say? 38 multiple choice here. Oh, no, I'm sorry. With 30 multiple choice, now we're in the grid ins, right? All of these guys, because we saw this, these are all of our grid ins, right? All of our grid ins. And where are we going? I mean, that's the hardest one. And that's it, right? One huge thing, and then we'll just open up to any discussions or questions or whatever you have. Here is the key concept. And if you want to see all of my concepts, I'll follow up with an email, whatever. We'll figure out a way to get it, but I do have YouTube videos on this. I've got top 10, the keys to success, and they're kind of just like this mindset stuff. And one of them is about playing your numbers. We talked about these numbers, all right? One of the key numbers, and while I'm doing that, I'll make sure you understand that this is how you get a hold of me, unless you want to use the Stevenson information, which is fine too. One of the key numbers that you need to understand is what's the score you need. And what's the score you need is the score you need to get into the school of your choice. So at some point, don't worry about it now. Don't worry about it before Tuesday, right? But at some point along your journey in test prep, look up schools that you're interested in and see what scores get you in the conversation, keeping in mind that test scores are weighted less now, right? Your GPA will be more, your essays, test scores are in there, right? For most schools, unless they're test blind. By the way, if the school says they're test blind, peace, don't worry about that, right? If every school you want to go to is test blind, then walk away from this whole process. You don't have to do it, right? But if any of your schools are test optional or test required, then you want to look at what score you need. And some very simple math, let me show you an example, right? Some very simple math. Let's say you need to, and a good SAT score, obviously a great SAT score is a 1600. That's a perfect score. A good SAT score is a 1400, right? Gets you in the conversation of a lot of schools. We're gonna do some silly math, but bear with me on this one, right? So we want a 1400. Just the math, we're gonna divide that by 2, right? Because remember, it's the math and the verbal. So we want a 700. Okay, a 700, your max on that is an 800. A 700 as a percentage of 800, 87.5, right? There's 58 math problems. So we basically need roughly, I'm gonna talk about the roughly 87.5% of those, right? So we say times 58, that basically puts us at 50 correct answers. Now I say roughly because everything on this test is scaled, and I won't go into the details of that, but basically what it boils down to is they're gonna put it on a bell curve scale where there's gonna be very few perfect scores and there's gonna be very few terrible scores and a lot of folks in the middle, right? It doesn't matter what you do, it all matters is how everybody else performed, right? So you can't control that. But if we say, if you want a 700, we need probably about 50 to 53-ish. That's why I give a range. That's why I give roughly correct answers on the whole math. So look at that differently. There's as many as 5 questions on the math that you could just guess and not even do, right? You could get 5 wrong, assuming the 53 are right, and get the score you want, right? That's totally liberating. That's totally, stress reducing to be able to say, like, most of us walk into a test, we're like, I want 100. I'm telling you, if you want a 700, you need an 88%. You need a B+. We can do B+, right? Now, those numbers change, right? If the school that you're looking at says, hey, you need a 1550, those numbers change. If the school you're looking at says you need a 1250, those numbers change, right? And this is the strategy around this, right? You know that number going into the test so that you know this is my target number. And that's how you do this test, right? It's not a content-based test where you're going to memorize information and spit it out the next day. It is a standardized strategic navigation of where you're going to spend your time. What are you going to score points on? Woo! What can I say, guys? We're at 9:17. I'm done with the walkthrough. I do want to check something. Let me stop my share because we're going to check on some questions that came in through our survey. And if there's any questions that you have, fire away, guys. This is your time. Questions that have come up. By the way, as I'm getting these questions, reminder that, you know, the night before, you should kind of gather your stuff. You should have your calculator ready. You probably don't have an admission ticket because you're going to be at the school. But if you are taking this in a separate testing center, have your admission ticket ready, know where you need to go for the test, know where the directions are, all of those things, right? Okay, question is, can we bring our own calculator? And does it need to be a scientific calculator, or can it be a graphing calculator? Yes, you need to bring your own calculator. It can be a scientific calculator. It can be a graphing calculator. It cannot be a calculator that communicates with the outside world, right? And if you bring like a giant keyboard, the proctor should be like, what are you trying to do with that one, right? TI-84s are great. A basic 4-function calculator, also great. Right. And yeah, there's some, if you're dialed with the graphing calculator and that gets you through some of the graphing ones, yes, use it, right? You can totally do that. But just be cautious of any calculator that looks like it can communicate with the outside world. I've even had students telling me that they've had smartwatches confiscated, right? So watch out for that stuff. All right, excellent. Other questions from anyone out here? Chat me, let me know. So we got about 10 minutes of that, unless we're good, right? Any questions? Number one thing you need to do between now and Tuesday, then let's close with this. Number one thing you need to be doing between now and Tuesday is telling yourself, you can do this. You can do this, right? Nobody should be walking out of this tonight saying, I'm a bad test taker. You should be telling yourself, maybe I'm not a good test taker yet, right? Yet you do the work, you get better. All right. And Tuesday will be a good data point, right? Generally, the process is take a full length practice test, get a score, look at your data, see what you need to work on it, do it again, take the test again, right? So you should all be planning for at least another sitting, maybe even a third time. After the third time, you can go fourth if you really want to, but usually scores plateau, because you don't have enough time to get better at this. If we had a whole year, 2 years, 3 years, yeah, we could get better, right? Okay, good question that came in. Is there an essay portion? Not on Tuesday. Not on Tuesday. And the SAT essay is being eliminated as of the June test. So if you need an essay, and that depends on the school, most schools don't care about the essays anymore because it's the least standardized portion of this test. And we can get in a whole debate around that. I tend to like the essay because it gives the schools a chance to see what you could do in a timed environment, as opposed to, you know, the college essays that are edited and in some cases, not the saying that you guys would do this, but, you know, ghost written, like mom or dad writes it for you. That'd be terrible. Don't do that. That's why, you know, a lot of schools would favor the timed essay, but not on Tuesday. There is no essay on Tuesday. That's why we did not go through it. Folks here, do you need to go to class after? I think so. That's your call though, right? I do think you need to go to class after, right? Check with your teachers though, right? If any of my students are on here and you're like, dude, I'm fried, just hit me up, let me know. We can figure something out, right? You can zoom in or you can watch the video. Your call on that, right? Your call. And folks that are in my class know that's generally pretty stress-free in my class. I think, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, check with your teachers on that one. And if you need to do that, just let them know. Be like on Monday, hey, I'm taking the SAT. You probably should be telling those morning teachers anyway. We all should know. But if you do need a break, again, you guys know your teachers better. Some teachers will be like, no, you don't get a break. Some teachers are like, whatever, it's all good. I think that's an individual thing. All right, other questions, guys. Here's the thing. If you have questions, hang, you know, ask questions. I can keep spouting stuff. Hopefully you're bored of me and you're like, I'm good. But if you want to hang and ask questions, hang. If you're good, you're good, right? And what I will do is I will, we've done recording this, so I will put this in a little video and I'll send it to the college center, see how they want to send it out. Any folks that responded in the survey that wants follow-up information, you know, again, I am doing a summer course. It's going to be online. It's Tuesday nights. It's 2 hours every Tuesday night. We do a deeper, much deeper dive than we did tonight. Right. And we actually do lots of practice with that. Okay. Snacks I recommend for breaks, whatever is good for the brain, right? Whatever your brain food is. I generally say stay away from the sugars, but some people are like, yo, I get focused with sugar. That's not me. right? I'd stick with, maybe some natural sugar, like some fruit, maybe a bar. Drink lots of water. I would definitely drink lots of water. You got to keep that brain hydrated, right? You got to keep that stuff flowing through the brain. So definitely some water. I'd stay away from, any caffeinated stuff, any sugary stuff. I wouldn't do Gatorade, but that's just me. You might like that Gatorade stuff. It's just generally pretty sweet. We're looking at those, those little Starbucks coffee, whatever they call them, those 32 grams of sugar in one bottle. Whoa. I tend to be a label reader. That's just me, but maybe not. I just stick with healthy stuff. But again, this is about you. Like, what gets you focused, relaxed? That's why I say don't do caffeine, right? Caffeine, we get all fired up and we just like, we want to rush through things, right? Again, some people are like, caffeine puts me to sleep. I don't know. Those are crazy people in my head, but maybe that's some of you guys here. When does the test start? When does the test end if it starts at 8? All right, so we had a 65-minute reading. We had what was the writing? We had a 35-minute writing. I forgot already. And then we had I just have to do the math. It's about 3 hours, right? It's about 3 hours. I think they'll probably plan for you not going to class until, that 1 o'clock class, right? So you should be able to get out in time for some lunch and then get to that 1 o'clock class. Then again, that is on regular timing. If you have testing accommodations, it's going to be longer for you. So prepare for that, right? Folks that have accommodations, the folks that don't have accommodations, like, oh, that's great, you have an extra. The folks that have accommodations, like, that just makes it longer, right? It makes it longer. So use your time. Be smart about it, right? If you know you have accommodations, bring extra water, bring extra snacks, bring the mindset to be like, okay, here was the 90-minute reading. Now I'm going to launch into another long kind of writing thing. So, be prepared for that. All right. Any other questions via chat? Any comments? Again, guys, if you're good, feel free to drop off. If you want to hang with any questions, fire away, right? If you are dropping off, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Radical. Good job, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck,
Mr.
Peter.
Higgins. That was really good.
Right on. Good to see you, man.
Thank you.
Good questions. Appreciate the questions. All right.